an exciting Thursday afternoon. We are here once again to take a look at what is happening in this great country of ours within the next 1 hour. Yes, the program 60 Minutes Nigeria, and I am your host Wilson Omasho, standing in for Erosa Abolaho, who is on leave. I believe the man is flexing right now, enjoying, when he comes back, he'll be giving you what he has gone to gather for your information and of course education. Well, today it's all about national interests versus the rule of law. And I want to bring back to mind that right now the lawyers, the legal practitioners, they are having their national conference, and they invited so many persons to talk to them. We're talking about the likes of the #1 man in Nigeria, the president, Muhammadu Buhari, and of course Osibajo, also the vice president. Say one or two things. So many top notable dignitaries in Nigeria were invited to speak to them on burning issues. But there was one statement that really rattled the boat. People were divided, divergent opinions, because our #1 man talked about sometimes if it's very important or absolutely important, it's good for us to forget about the rule of law when it comes to national interest. When we talk about the fight against corruption, to do the needful, and that didn't go down too well with so many legal practitioners. Why some are saying, yeah, there are some sense in what he just said. That's causing so much debate in our polity. With me here in the studio, I have a lady and of course gentlemen to throw more light on this so I can get to hear their opinions and of course their views. Starting from my extreme left, I have a one-time gubernatorial candidate, and of course he's an author, a politician, an entrepreneur, a businessman, both local and international politics is well grounded. Johnny, welcome. Bishop Akalame, welcome to the show.
We say good afternoon. Good afternoon, viewers.
And sitting close to him, it's a woman, yes, a lady, a legal practitioner. When she opens her mouth to really analyze each of the legal perspective, you really get to realize that she's got it. And of course, he's a right activist also. Talk about political issues, local and international. She's well grounded. Join me, welcome, Boibe Edogo. Welcome to the show, madam.
Thank you so much for having me.
Right. And sitting very close to me, a politician, a political analyst, local and international politics is well grounded. He's a businessman, and of course, a chieftain of one great political party. I wouldn't want to go into names right now. Yes, please join me. Welcome, Dr. Samson Esibo. Welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure meeting you.
All right.
Good afternoon, viewers.
Okay, so let's put the show on the road. Bishop Akalame.
Thank you.
What's your take on what is happening right now? People are still talking about it. Sure, sometimes or most of when it's very important, the rule of law for national interests to come tops. What's your angle?
Thank you, Wisi. Before I give you my take on this issue, I want us to have a foundation. What is rule of law all about? The phrase rule of law. The absolute supremacy, absolute predominance of law over everybody, both the ruler and the ruled, including decision taking in a country. That means the rule of law is predominant and supreme. According to A.V. Dicey, which is a professor of English law, wrote a book on the law of constitution in 1885, says that anyone that is being given the responsibility to govern as a leader must exercise his authority in accordance with the laws of the land. Otherwise, we have anarchy and chaos. That no citizen should be arrested except as prescribed by the law. So, I believe that the statements that Mr. President made in the opening ceremony of the NBA National Conference, I believe that was not what he meant, in my own personal opinion. Do you know why I said it? The blame should go to the writer of that speech. It came into the bone marrow that people are being paid to do a job and they don't do it very well. And I believe that the writer of that speech do not understand the principle of register in English, that he used the wrong language for Mr. President. And Mr. President was just a reader of the statement. You know what happened in 2010? When the 7 Senates invoked the doctrine of necessity to ensure that the then Vice President, Goodluck Jonathan, become an acting president for national interest and security, which negated what the rule of law. There are a lot of limitations to the rule of law. Everything you see today emanates from the rule of law. In any country where there's no rule of law, we have what is called arbitrary rule. And I believe that Mr. President, as number one citizen of this country, understand that at this point in time, this is a democratic system of government. It is not a military rule. It is not a one-party system government. When the rule of law, the application of the rule of law can be limited. Though we have a lot of limitations, like when we have state of emergency, when we have national insecurity, like what I said, when we have what is called the diplomatic immunity.
We'll come to that.
So a lot of issues.
We'll come to that. The limitations of the rule of law, if there are any, I'll come back to you on that. Thank you so much for laying such a foundation. What's your take, madam?
Well, let me start from the foundation. Generally, it has long been settled that the rule of law is always supreme in any state, in any democratic state. And then Nigeria is not an exception. And Section 1 of the ground norm, which is the Constitution, places the Constitution as being supreme over every other law, over every other organ of government. So, for any democratic society, for any civilized society, for any civil society, the rule of law is always supreme. In fact, the nation state we have now, the nation we are having now is a product of the rule of law. The fact that we have an active president, a democratically elected president, is a product of the application of the rule of law. And what does the rule of law entail? It entails supremacy of the law over every individual, over every office within the country. It entails equality before the law. It entails obedience to the provisions of the law. So I want to say that under no circumstances can we in any way divest a functional democratic society from the application and obedience of the rule of law. Any attempt to do that will lead to what we call arbitrary rule, will lead to what we call anarchy. And before you know it, you'll be looking at what we refer to as a banana island. I want to say that Nigeria cannot be an exception. And then the statement credited to our amiable president, I want to say that to some extent we should look beyond the literary meaning and look at the contextual meaning of what he intended, the intendment of that statement, because if you want to take it on the surface of it, it will greatly be inconsistent with the provisions of the Constitution. It will be inconsistent with well-settled principles of constitutional law, and that it cannot be made to stand. That kind of statement is like placing something on nothing and expecting to stand. That suddenly in the 21st century, you want to say that issues of national security is above the law. I want to say that that statement, we should look at the contextual meaning, because if you look at the contextual meaning, yes, issues of national security is a very burning and pressing issue. But even the law provides for what determines issues of national security. You have elements, agents of the law, you have courts of competent jurisdictions to determine what gives rise to issues of national security. You also have courts of, it's only a court of competent jurisdiction that can say, okay, curtail a person's fundamental human right for the protection of the issues of national security. So except you are curtailing a person's right for the purpose of, and with the prescription and stipulation of a recognized court in Nigeria, then any action against that fundamental principle will be what? Arbitrary. So it's only a court of competent jurisdiction that can interpret what amounts to national security, what amounts to being a threat to national security. It's only a court of competent jurisdiction that can also determine and say, okay, this person's freedom, right to freedom as guaranteed under Section 35 of the 1999 Constitution, or someone's right to life as guaranteed under Section 33 of the 1999 Constitution should be curtailed for the purpose of what? Protecting national security. So you cannot, under any circumstances, without the application of the rule of law, place national security over the rule of law. That will amount to a complete state of what? It will lead to a state of anarchy and tyranny. And presently, Nigeria is practicing what? A democratic system of government, whereby the rule of law, the dictates of the law, is supreme over every human being and over every agent of government.
Thank you so much. Well, she spoke as a legal practitioner. You talked about the contextual meaning, while Bishop talked about the people that really did the job that our noble president just read it. Anyway, I'll come back to both of you on your points. Dr. Samson Isibo, what's your angle?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The speech made by the president is unfortunate and is unacceptable to the masses of this country, because come look at it, this present regime, they never brought something that is favorable to the masses, only something that is negative. Take for instance, we heard about fake speech. I mean, is it fake news, and what do you call it? The other one, the wicked words or derogatory this thing.
Okay, hate speech. Derogatory, okay.
Yes. Why all those things? Why? The latest one is to place the national security above the rule of law. It's untenable. It's vexatious. And it's a thing that should be condemned by right-thinking individuals and the international community. Why? This country has passed through so many crucibles of fire. We don't want to experience it again. Why should a president who knows that the masses are suffering, we lack so many things, there's no food on the table, no structural development since he came to power, changing, is it to change from good governance to despotic governing or dictatorial tendencies?
But he never said he was a dictator, and moreover also...
But the taste of the pudding is in the eating. You see that he's working towards that notion now. Is it when he has already subjugated the masses to that thing, the dungeon of despotic means that which will cry? It's already there. You say, before you allow something to enter your eye, you wave it away. That is what this man is trying, what do you call it? He's trying to test the intelligence of Nigeria, whether we will accept it. No! We will go to any extent to stop it. It won't work in this country because we are practicing democratic governance. We are not in the Republic of Uganda where Idi Amin did anything as he liked, or Republic of Democratic Republic of Congo where they did anything as. In fact, it is shameful on us to hear that thing from a foremost country in Africa, saying that they will let the rule of law be second fiddle. No, it can't be. This country is based on the rule of law. It's formulated on the rule of law.
But he never said that the rule of law becomes second fiddle. He never said that. He said in some cases, national security...
What are the cases? Is this not the cases because once you are opposed to him, to his ambition, to his use of power in irrational form, then the rule of law will become a backyard thing.
You don't have proof of that.
I don't have proof of that.
All right.
So that is it. We will not allow it.
All right.
It's very, very annoying, and it's a thing Nigerians should stand up and resist it.
All right, I'll come back to you, Dr. Samson. But moreover, whatever they say right here in the studio is entirely their own opinion. It has nothing to do with ITV Radio. But I know also that the Constitution is made for the betterment of Nigerians. And there are reasons why he chose to read that speech for Nigerians to really be aware. Now, let me come back to you, Bishop. You talked about him just being the reader. I believe before anyone will go through a particular speech, he might have read through over and over again. And people are like saying that the reason why he chose to raise this is to aid the anti-graft war. Because of the delay, people will say that no one has been convicted. So do you think the rule of law in this instance, or I say the national security, should take preeminence over whatever we say is rule of law? After all, the rule of law is what we Nigerians says it is.
Thank you. In my inauguration, when I started, I told you that the system of government we are practicing is democracy, is democratic. We are not practicing military rule. Neither do we have one system, one party system government that can bring about dictatorship and autocracy. When a president in his bedroom can just wake up to say, oh, this is how I want it, and it will come to pass. No. What I am saying, philosophically, as a politician, I said, Mr. President, who understands the system of government we are practicing, cannot wake up to tell us that the national security should be supreme, should be elevated above the rule of law. Then I told you, if Mr. President should read that in the National Conference of the NBA, in the presence of well-respected jurists, SCNs, and well-respected lawyers, in their face, that the rule of law, that the national security should be placed above the rule of law, I am not too certain that a number one citizen of this country who understand what we are doing can do that. That is why I told you that when you have said that which I heard, it was just a reader. That he may have briefed the writer. This is what I want to say. Maybe the writer now use the wrong language. That's why I told you that the writer may lack the knowledge, may not have a good knowledge of register in English language. He used that word out of context because you can never place anything, elevate anything above the rule of law. Because like I told you, everything that we have, the country, the leadership, take of it, we are taken from the rule of law. If you are a leader, you must not exercise authority outside the rule of law. You must operate in accordance with the rule of the land. Like I told you, if you don't do that, what we have is chaos and anarchy. I don't think we are not ready for that. But my word is this. Mr. President should know that despite the fact that we have a lot of limitation, militating against the application, the full application of the rule of law, we are not even happy that the rule of law is not well applicable in Nigeria. The national security that we are talking about today is one of the limitations of the rule of law in Nigeria. How? Good. A leader will tell you that I have to do this for the security of the land because he wants to jettison the rule of law. He wants to do things on his own. He just wants to operate on his own. When people are being arrested without trials, be kept in prison without trials for national security. It is only the competent court of law that can determine who is guilty. We have seen what is happening because of that even the court will grant bail to a convicted person. And the president will say, no, for national security, and he should remain there. You know, see, what I'm saying is this, is that I have seen in this country, in my research, that the judiciary is not independent. Why do you now say we have three arms of government? Where is the separation of power? So, it has become very worrisome that the way we are going, just the way we are going, I will say we are practicing democracy. We are headed towards anarchy, chaos.
How? In what terms? Because right now, what do right now is to shield against
what I'm saying, that if Mr. President could read our speech without looking at it and meditate, that's what I said, he was just a reader. Without looking at it, doing very well. As a number one citizen, that what I'm about to do is wrong. It shows that we have a lot of issues.
Okay.
We have problems facing us now as a nation. That the way we are going now, if we're not getting the rule of law, where are we heading?
All right, Bishop, I'll come back to you. Just hold on with those points of yours, but I would like to caution what your emotions. Now, let me come to you. Talked about the judiciary not being independent. If you take a look at some cases, when we talk about the fight against corruption, the anti-graft war, according to some report, the judiciary seems to be a clog in the wheel of progress in prosecution. And for what people are saying, if only there could be a kind of an express means of delivering judgment, that would have been better. That is when national security comes into play. Forget about the slow pace of judiciary and go straight to either punishing, apprehending, or jailing this culprit. What's your angle?
Well, in Nigeria now, issue of national security, curbing corruption is pivotal among the aims and objectives of our present government. And I want to say, just allow me to land, I want to say that that statement accredited to the president, first of all, the speech, if he read the speech, of course, he should take responsibility for the speech. Whether I don't want to believe that he will read the speech, he does not know the content. If he's reading a speech in his capacity as president, of course, he is responsible and should take responsibility for whatever he says in that speech. And then assuming but not considering that actually you looking at the literary interpretation of his statement that in issues of national security, the national security should take precedence over the rule of law, it will be amounting to a very dangerous precedent. It will be amounting to a very dangerous precedent, and of course a pivotal step towards applying a dictatorship or dictatorial rule in Nigeria, because issues of national security cannot really be determined. It's a very wide and speculative concept, largely out of what a person determines as issues of national security. That's why even what determines issues of national security should be left to the interpretations of the court. So that if his statement, if you are to go by his statement, means that whatever the executive now determines is an issue of national security, they can take any actions without recourse to the rule of law. It's a very clear yardstick for dictatorial rule and anarchy, and taking us back to living in the state of nature, which God forbid Nigeria will never go back. So I want to say that I believe the contextual meaning, that is his zeal to promote the fight against corruption, may have propelled him to make that kind of statement, but I don't feel his statement should be interpreted outside the confines of the law. Even what amounts to national security, even what amounts to the dereliction of someone's rights should be interpreted by the courts of competent jurisdiction. Then looking at the second ambit, issues of the judiciary. By the provisions of the 1999 Constitution, the judiciary is actually what distinct and a separate arm of government to act what we call check and balance, check on the executives, check on the legislative arm of government, their actions and their inactions. Is not supposed to be under or subsumed under the executive, but it's an unbiased umpire, and that's what the Constitution provides. Just that in practice and theory we may have a divergent, we may have different things playing out. But the truth is that at the end of the day, any action, no matter what we are trying, no matter the problem we are trying to curb, once it is done outside the precepts of the law, it leads to, it's an illegality, and it will amount to what illegitimacy of that extant government. And I don't think any government that did not come in as a dictator will want to toe that line. If you are having issues with the slow judicial process, if you are having issues with the fact that, okay, the present legal and regulatory regime put in place to curb corruption is not effective, we are having issues with the fact that it is not efficacious, it's not effective in curbing corruption, then we should go back to the legislatures to make new laws or amend new laws, because the work of the judiciary is to interpret the law. They did not make the law. They are basically there to interpret the law. If we feel, first of all, the judicial process is too slow, the National Assembly is there. They can, by an act, create a special court just to take care of issues regarding corruption. We have been canvassing for this. If we feel issues of corruption is so serious, and of course it's very serious in Nigeria, and we want to deal with it so that we have speedy redress of cases, you have cases determined within 6 months, 3 months, the National Assembly should go and look for how to make a law to enable that action. So the problem as at now is not within the judiciary. Their work is to interpret the law, is to determine what the law says at a particular point in time. Their work is to look at the provisions of the law and look at a person's actions if it falls foul play with the provisions of law. So if the laws, the present laws, the extant laws in Nigeria is so loose and there are so many lacunas whereby an offender can easily go scot-free, then the National Assembly should go back and make laws to make it more difficult, more cumbersome for offenders to go scot-free. Except that is done, except we go back to the drawing board by redressing our laws, because obviously there are a lot of gaps in our laws. Our laws are, we need to update it to the present state of this 21st century. We have so many issues of corruption, money being carted here and there, and the present administration is very serious on this issue. What have they done to redress the laws? What have they done?
Good question. Now you just hold on. I'll come back to you on that, because that is just the next question. We have so much loopholes. Hence, nobody's been convicted, nobody's been jailed. You get to see appeal upon appeal. You get to hear you don't have enough evidence, you don't have enough proof. So don't you think if this is given preeminence, so to speak, all these loopholes will be checked? Dr. Sibo.
Mr. Moderator, permit me to digress a little. I want to ask one question. What is national insecurity? In my own layman's view, I think the insecurity our Mr. President is talking about is when you oppose him, when you confront him constitutionally, those are insecurity.
No, he never said that. He never said that.
He never said that, but yes. I'm saying that I'm guessing.
Okay, you're not permitted to guess. You have to start with your proof.
Then what is national security is when S-men attack the villagers, when SS people blocked National Assembly, they are not insecurity. When policemen blocked the president of the Senate House and the deputy Senate president, they are not insecurity.
But they've been taken care of. They've been
what have they done? Have they been taken to court? Have they been prosecuted? The DG was sacked. Now, what I'm saying is the thing that favors the president is what is national security, but anything that opposes him or that is negative to him is insecurity.
Does corruption favors the president?
We cannot allow personal interest to supersede the national interest by saying that the so thing is insecurity, that thing is security. Or we are saying that let the rule of law prevail over any action taken by the president or whatsoever. We should not allow any primordial sentiments to come in and say, yes, because Dr. Sibo has confronted me, has criticized me, no, go and put him in the gallows. Go and put him in. No, we won't allow that. So it is we who are speaking for the masses now that we voice out loud and clear that whether it's prosecuting anti-graft war, what is anti-graft war, what has he done about it? That bias.
Hold on now, Doctor. Okay, just be calm. Doctor, I want to admonish right now, you have to please.
That is my own opinion.
I know.
Make my own opinion.
Even if it's your opinion, yes, sir. Nobody is fighting with you about your opinion, but you are on air right now. Millions are watching. For you to bring out your own opinion, you have facts. You should have proof. You use the word guess, and we don't guess. You have to be straight to the point.
Okay. I'm not guessing. I'm factual. I can give instances. Okay? okay, in this state, somebody who ruled here before have been on the neck of EFCC, prosecute this man, prosecute this man, to the extent that one person went to court that, yes, I want to prosecute this man, investigate him. Have they done it? Is that not bias? But if it is other opposing side, they will pick him like a cigarette. Eh? We see him before. So my brother, let's say the fact. Right. So what I'm saying in essence is that the president should follow the rule of law. Dilly-dally here and there, saying that no, we won't allow. We don't know his motive. The motive cannot be far from to pick up his opposition members and pick as the 2019 election is drawing nearer. You see, so to silence with the oppositions and make sure that we are not hard with flimsy excuse, we just forget us in the garden. So we don't want.
But the thing is that is not the end according to what he said. He said it's to enhance the anti-graft war. He never talked about throwing oppositions into the gallows. He never talked about intimidation. He never talked about chaos. He never talked about anything to the rule of law.
Is that so?
Yeah.
Until when that thing happens before we cry.
Okay, let it happen first, before I will know. Okay, I'll come back to you. Now, Bishop, you are giving so much points. You drew an analogy from what is happening in the society to the speech writer, to the president reading the speech. And one prominent lawyer, a legal practitioner, said, look, in a way, what the president said is correct. While retinue of legal practitioners said is wrong. I wouldn't want to mention names right now. In what aspect do you think national security should supersede the rule of law if we really want to go by what the president read? After all, like what she admitted to, we have lacunas, we have lapses, the lawyers, they call it loopholes, whereby you just can't grab on a guilty person. So they want a person to tie him or herself to those loopholes in the law. You can't apprehend them. So when should this law be enforced, if it must be enforced?
You see, when we're talking about national security, it's a good thing. But you see, in this part of the world, where most of our leaders are selfish, where most of our leaders are self-centered, where most of our leaders think about themselves, we will not give them the opportunity to elevate national security above the rule of law. My brother, if not for the rule of law, myself and you will not be talking today in this studio. I think they want to hide under the umbrella of national security to go into dictatorship, autocracy, where the rights will not be taken away from you. National security, fine, but we have some issues that we don't have the time to wait for the law to prevail. We do it in a way that we have security for the interest of the country. But you not see that under this umbrella, majority of our leaders, we had order it to punish those who are against them, to punish those in opposition, to punish those that do not like their faces. I do not know, I still maintain my ground that I do not think in my imagination that Mr. President, who is a president under a democratic system, can come up with such statement that the rule of law should be jettisoned. That is the meaning.
That is your own explanation of it.
No, my brother.
Because he gave instances.
My brother,
he gave instances.
If you go to the Bible, so many men of God have different interpretation of the chapters of the scriptures.
So that's your interpretation.
So right now, what I presume, in my own interpretation, from Mr. President's speech, which I know that he ought not to have to say. That's why I told you I take the blame to the writer. Because I don't think Mr. President will know the kind of system we are practicing, can say that. Here right now, if we jettison the rule of law, that means there will be no need for constitution. So the constitution will not be in existence. We will just be operating. Military rule in disguise. Dictatorship in disguise. Why do we have up to 91 political parties? It's not because we are in democracy. Are we in one party system? Why do you not think that one man wants to sit in his own parlor, in bedroom, and begin to dictate for the country? It will work. Like I said to us now, if we allow national security, people like Dasuki will remain in prison forever. If we allow national security, so many people who are in opposition, who want to contest this forthcoming presidential election, will be held captive in perpetuity.
But you don't have proof of that.
No, my brother. My dear. Mr. Wesley, you don't have proof of that. Mr. Wesley, are you there? Mr. Wesley, you don't have proof of that. Listen, let me tell you something. Mind you, hold on. Bishop, hold on.
I've given a warning before.
Good.
If you want to say something, hold on, let me finish, please.
Okay, go on.
You should have proof. We don't presume. Use the word I presume. You don't presume.
You don't assume. You don't assume. Listen. I said, listen to me. I want to understand what I'm saying here. You are in Nigeria. I am in Nigeria. Right? Why are we talking here? We want to have a better country. A country. When you travel out of this country, you are talking, say, I'm in Nigeria. See, when in Nigeria, they give you a good handshake. In Nigeria, they give you a kind of hospitality that you do not expect. They care for you. That is the kind of country I am dreaming of. I just want a better Nigeria. All right. So, if I am talking to you, I am saying that with the crop of leaders we have in Nigeria now, if we allow national security to go above the rule of law, many of us will suffer.
Okay, thank you.
It's not a presumption.
Okay, I'll come back to you on that. Now, you just sort of please, Bishop, the flag is being raised right now. Watch your emotions. Don't mention names, because in the case of the man you just mentioned, I believe that it's just still in court. So please, watch your name mentioning, all right? I believe that the court of community jurisdiction is handling the case of Dasuki, so let's leave it out of that. Then let me come to you. Is there no situation whereby national security should take preeminence over the rule of law? And don't forget also about the president's power is termed the executive order. What about that?
The truth is that looking at the Nigerian constitution, there is no ground. There is no ground. There is no situation whereby issues of national security should take prevalence over the rule of law, even in a state of emergency. Even in a state of war. Do you know that even in international law, in a state of war, there are rules of war. You cannot fight war without following the rules of international law concerning rules of war. The same thing applies to this country. Any attempts to derogate from the fundamental principle of the supremacy of the rule of law is a clear pathway to dictatorship, whereby you have one leader that dictates whatever he wants to do. And Nigeria is not practicing that system of government, except we want to fall back to dictatorship. But any attempt to say, okay, a particular national security issue should supersede the rule of law is presently inconsistent with the 1999 Constitution. It's inconsistent as it is. I say we want to amend the Constitution and say that, okay, let's create some situations whereby overwhelming national security issues should take precedence over the rule of law. And it will be a very, very dangerous amendment, because issues of national security, you cannot determine it. It's like an unruly horse. You don't know where to take it to. You have economic issues that can cause national security issues. You have political issues. You have religious issues. Presently in Nigeria, there are so many, I can mention up to 10 issues that are national issues of security, like this issue of Fulani herdsmen, issue of Boko Haram, issue of religious intolerance, and all of that. At what point in time can we cannot, using our present legal and regulatory framework in Nigeria, we cannot justify any situation whereby a national security issue will take precedence over the application of the rule of law. Whatever the issue is should still be done within the confines of the law. Don't forget, the law refers to the legislations, the rules and regulations. We have different acts permitting different actions, so that if there is really a very pressing issue, let the National Assembly make a law legitimizing it. But for the executive to unilaterally take actions without any backing from any legislation, without any backing from any law, then it will be inconsistent with the present constitution, and it is a clear pathway to anarchy, which Nigeria, we don't plan to operate that system of government, whereby one person is the ruler and determines what happens and what don't, and it will be very dangerous, because the only protection the common man has is the law. The last hope of the common man is actually the courts of law. So now any attempt now to jettison the efficacy of the courts of law, to jettison the efficacy of our present laws and say, okay, the executive has supreme powers based on what they determine is an issue of national security. To my mind, the issue of Fulani herdsmen crisis is the most pressing issue of national security we have in Nigeria now. More pressing than corruption, because here in the country where people are being wanton killings, at least we see reports, crisis here and there, they kill this number, crisis here and there, we see laws should be put in place. These are more pressing issues than issues. Corruption is very pressing, I know, but present wanton killings of Nigeria by herdsmen, by terrorists, insecurity, these are present issues burning Nigeria. But all of this should be addressed within the confines of the law. That's why we have 3 arms of government.
All right, that's why we have 3 arms of government. Now, with the slow pace of the law, because generally people are saying that the law is very, very slow, and we have some sleeky, what I mean sleeky personalities that can use 1 or 2 loopholes to escape the grip of the law due to the lacuna in that law. Do you think the special court should be made, like what is suggested, to aid the fight against corruption, because it's on the precipice of the anti-graft war? Doctor?
No, I won't allow them. The masses will not allow them to create any special court, because they will use it anyhow to hunt down their oppositions. 2, you know, let me digress a little. You know that Amnesty International, Transparency International, whatever, they've painted this country negatively. There is nothing this present corps of federal executive will put their hand that we benefit the masses. They are there. They know that the ground is already shaking. So they are there. They are so desperate. Any
opposition, they've been there to favor the masses.
They are ready to use any means. So by setting up another, what do we call it, with immediate effect, a court to try. It will, in fact, they will just silence the whole opposition member. If they hear see but talking, oh yeah, go sit in. Second, they will arrange my enemy in the so-called court. So my brother, we don't want that one. You see, what are we saying? My sister have already said it. This killing thing, which is so paramount, which is in the sight of everybody now, do it. So stop it. No way. You are not telling us you want to let national security.
But don't you think that national security being above the rule of law can really solve them up?
We know when the masses
hold on now. You are mentioning a particular tribe.
Yes.
Not all of them are headsmen. So
hold
on, because of what you said, you said to pick up the Fulanis. Please, you have to retract that statement.
Fulani herdsmen.
Okay, Fulani herdsmen. Okay, killer herdsmen.
Okay, better. Bandit is better.
What bandit?
Yes.
What transforms into bandit now? Is it not the Fulani killer herdsmen? How can you change the So what I'm saying is that we don't want any court that is not in the constitution. That is not, we don't want that one. Let them follow the rules of law. The court are trying. They don't want to mistakenly jail person based on the pressure from above. They want to go step by step to get to their destination. You see, it's the best way. I'm not my sister is a professional in that area. But in the layman's view, I don't want to be rushed to court today. Tomorrow they say I'm guilty. Before you know it, be. inside the prison. So I don't want that one. So my brother, so therefore, you have to take for instance. It was not yesterday. Prime Minister May.
Yeah, Theresa May.
Theresa May, you know, did she painted Nigeria well by saying that the most poorest of the poor on earth is from Nigeria. Is that not very derogatory, very in fact? I nearly cry. And it's true, but move from here to Main Road, you will see people scavenging.
Most predominant
picking something on the road in a country where we have everything. Everything has been misplaced. Then you want to start, you know, to stiffen the masses to submission by using draconian this thing to turn the conscience upside down. It's not so. Do the right thing, do the needful, rule us well, because now it's only ruler we have, we don't have leaders, so to speak. So they should rule us well. Let the masses have 3 square meals a day. Let there be security. Let there be infrastructural development. All this bring law. You know, it's leading towards dictatorship, anarchy, and we don't want that one in the country. And 2019 election is coming here, and you want to bring in more, you know, illegal laws, which we stifle the opposition. I'm still making reference.
They didn't bring up any illegal law. Please,
okay, sir. Please help me define what is fake news. What is hate speech?
All right, now that would be a talk for another day. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Now, you just hold on now, because right now we have to follow the rules and regulations governing the area. We talk about the fake news and the hate speech some other time, but now focusing on this topic: anti-graft war, rule of law versus national interests. Bishop, you are a politician. You are also among those that just to be among the ruling class. Your party have their own manifesto. Do you think that this has anything to do with the advent of the forthcoming election next year?
Of course. Of course. I told you when I was talking to you that this is just all about 2019 election.
Simple.
Then I told you again that if we allow national security, that those who have the intention to contest the election with Mr. President will have issues. Because
they will not have issues.
Because you know what?
If your hands are clean, what do you have to fear?
No, I'm not talking about corruption. I'm talking about
won't have issues, because everybody have the right to contest. So don't say they will have issues.
Let me tell you something. Let me see, when I say something, you ask me to buttress, expatiate, right? I love this country. I do not hate any leader. My brother, if you're a leader, you are doing well, you are my best friend. If you're a visionary leader, even when I'm here, I'll talk about you. But when things are not going well, I will tell you, this is wrong. You know what? I am a 21st century material. I have what it takes. I have what I can put on the table to ensure we have a better country. Even if I'm not occupying any office now, the platform you are giving me, the platform my TV is giving me, is enough for me, for now, to give my suggestion. So, we are not in Banana Republic. Do you see? Nigeria is too big for the national insult, for the economic insult we receive every day, because we have leaders who do not have this country first as their interests, who place the interests of themselves, the interests of their political party above the interests of a nation. What I normally say, and I'll say it to you again, that it is because we have a country that we talk about leadership. It is because we have a country we talk about political parties. It is because we have the people that we talk about elections. My brother, if all these things are not in existence, there will be no need for leadership. There will be no need for political parties. There will be no need for anything. So, we should do things the way they should be done. This country does not belong to one party, does not belong to one particular person, it belongs to all of us. Listen, we all have to think out of the box to ensure that we have visionary leaders who are sound, good in policy making, who are sound in looking ahead. What will better our lives? All right. Then, please, I want to say this. I want to say this finally, please. Finally, please. You really belong to have the last time is up. I want to say this. I want to say this message to a local council.
No, hold on now. We're not talking about that, right?
No. I want to say this before I go. Please, technical school road is bad.
Thank you.
It's very bad.
Thank you.
They should do something about it. Bishop, you have stopped my vehicle.
Bishop, thank you. The signal is just so strong, I have to call it a wrap right now. As in, it's up. Not to worry, national issues are burning issues. They are burning issues. We'll have other time to really come talk about them. We'll see you again next week, Thursday, God willing. Bye for now.